We're learning more about the mass shooting in Bowdoin earlier this week.
The man who authorities say confessed to killing 4 people at a home in Bowdoin Tuesday, then opening fire on vehicles on Interstate 295 in Yarmouth, made his first court appearance in West Bath this morning.
Alyssa Thurlow has more on the court records released today that show what happened after the shootings took place.
34-year-old Joseph Eaton of Bowdoin, who was just released from prison last Friday, is charged with 4 counts of murder. Police say the victims were Eaton's parents, 62-year-old Cynthia Eaton and 66-year-old David Eaton, and their friends, 72-year-old Robert Eager and 62-year-old Patricia Eager. State police say all 4 died of gunshot wounds. Court records released today detail the gruesome scene at the Eagers' home on Augusta Road in Bowdoin on Tuesday morning, where police say Eaton and his parents were staying. Newly released court documents indicate Eaton killed them on Monday, the day before their bodies were found. Records show Patricia Eager's sister attempted to call her around 8:30 Tuesday to let her know she would be stopping by. She never got a response. When she arrived at the home shortly after 9, she told police she found blood on the front steps. Once inside the home, she found broken glass, more blood, several firearms laying out, and, quote, bullet holes everywhere. She went outside and called 911. When police arrived, they found the bodies of the Eagers and Cynthia Eaton inside the home and the body of David Eaton in a barn. Police say the bodies were all covered. A dog was also found dead. On the kitchen island, detectives found a note stating someone had been molested and there was nothing done about it. The note mentioned someone being freed of pain and the writer, quote, wanted a new life. Authorities say it was not written to anyone nor signed by anyone. Here's what the attorney representing Eaton Thursday had to say outside the courthouse.
What happened in Bowdoin is undeniably tragic, but what I would ask everybody is to please reserve judgment. Mr. Eaton's defense team is going to be led by Andrew Wright, and they are eager to receive information to learn about what happened in both Bowdoin and in Yarmouth and help him navigate the difficult weeks and months ahead.
Later Tuesday morning, police responded to I-295 in Yarmouth, where people and vehicles were hit by gunfire. Officials learned 51-year-old Sean Halsey and his 2 children, Justin and Paige, were shot along the highway. They were taken to Maine Medical Center in Portland. Paige Halsey remains in critical condition. Records detail a witness saw a man standing in the middle of exit 15, waving his hands with what appeared to be blood on him. Records also reveal the car Eaton had driven was rented by his father on April 16th. Eaton was taken into custody, and police say he later admitted he shot and killed his parents and their friends. Authorities say he told them he began shooting on the highway because he believed he was being followed. Eaton has not yet been charged in connection with the Yarmouth shootings. He did not enter a plea in court today and is being held without bail in Wiscasset. A judge ordered a psychological evaluation. Eaton is due back in court in